This is the summary and analysis of Powerless by Lauren Roberts, summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Bill. Disclaimer. This is an unofficial summary and analysis of Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It is not the original book and is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or authorized by the author or the publisher. This work is created solely to provide key insights, narrative retelling, and thematic commentary for educational and informational purposes. All names, characters, settings, trademarks, and references from the original novel remain the property of their respective owners. Every effort has been made to follow the principles of fair use under Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act. Readers are strongly encouraged to purchase and read the original book from the author or publisher to experience the full story, context, and creative intent as intended. Introduction. The kingdom of Ilya was built on blood, and Paedyn Gray has spent her life pretending she does not bleed. In this land, power is everything. Those who survived the plague were gifted with extraordinary abilities, commanding the elements, bending minds, shaping metal with their bare hands, and were exalted as elites, the chosen heirs of a cruel new world. Those who remained untouched were condemned as ordinaries, considered weak, inferior, and dangerous for their lack of power. The crown declared them illegal, a threat to be eradicated, and the enforcers made certain that almost all of them were. Paedyn should have been among the dead, yet she lives hidden in the slums of Lut, masking herself in layers of deception. She claims to be a psychic, a rare and valuable elite who can glimpse what lies ahead. In truth, her only weapon is her mind, sharp, quick, endlessly observant. She watches people so closely she can predict what they will do next, and that illusion of foresight keeps her alive. Her world is small, carved from the wreckage of forgotten streets, shared only with Adina, the only person who knows the truth about her. It is a fragile, careful life, and it begins to unravel the moment she crosses paths with Kai Azer, the future enforcer of Ilya and the son of its merciless king. Where Paedyn has survived by vanishing, Kai has been forged to dominate. He is power incarnate, able to mimic any ability he touches, and raised to be a weapon in service to the throne. When their paths collide, a spark ignites. First suspicion, then obsession, then something neither of them can name. That spark will drag Paedyn from the shadows into the glittering halls of the capital, where she is thrust into the purging trials, a brutal competition where young elites kill or die to prove their strength. Trapped among enemies with godlike powers, Paedyn must survive while hiding that she has none. The game is rigged, the dangers relentless, and one misstep will expose her secret and end her life. Powerless is a story of masks and the cost of wearing them. It is about how people become weapons, how fear becomes a cage, and how love can be both the key and the spark that burns the cage to the ground. As Paedyn and Kai circle each other in a kingdom built to crush anyone who does not conform, they must decide whether to uphold the world that shaped them, or destroy it for the chance to build something new. Chapter 1. Paedyn. Paedyn has long perfected the art of being invisible. Hidden in the crumbling outer reaches of Ilya's glittering city, she slips through shadows and crowded markets like a whisper, stealing just enough to survive without drawing notice. In a world ruled by the elites, those gifted with rare powers who hold dominion over the powerless, her survival depends on never standing out. The crown hunts anyone without power who dares to disrupt the order, branding them ordinaries, and Paedyn knows what fate awaits if she's discovered. So she has built a life on silence and secrets, her quick hands and quicker mind her only weapons. But beneath her practiced detachment runs a low thrum of resentment. She watches the elites strut through the city's golden heart, while the powerless rot in its shadows, and the injustice gnaws at her like a constant ache. That hidden fire flickers to life the night she crosses paths with danger. While slipping through the streets, she witnesses an ambush, an elite prince attacked in the dark. Acting on instinct, she intervenes, her movements honed by years of thievery and evasion. The prince survives, and Paedyn expects nothing but trouble for her recklessness. Instead, her life implodes in a way she could never have foreseen. Her face is seen. Her name is spoken. And the prince she saved does not let her vanish back into obscurity. This single impulsive act, saving someone she should have left to fate, yanks her out of the shadows she has hidden in all her life and into the blaze of the crown's attention. It is the first crack in the walls she has built around herself, and though she does not yet realize it, this crack will widen until it brings the entire kingdom down on her head. Chapter 2. Kai. Kai has been bred for power since his first breath. As the crown prince of Ilya and heir to the throne, his life has been forged in discipline, duty, and ruthless expectation. Every moment is sharpened into purpose. Every weakness is sanded away before it can take root. Power is not just his inheritance, it is his burden. The city bows before him, and he wears their fear like armor. Yet beneath the polished steel of his composure lies something he will not name: the creeping rot of disillusion. He has been raised to believe in the order of their world, in the rightness of the elite's dominion, but lately the edges of that certainty have begun to fray. He sees the way the powerless cower, the way their bodies sag under invisible chains, and something in him resents how numb he has become to it. He knows what loyalty demands. He also knows it is hollow. When he is attacked in the shadows of the city and saved by a nameless girl, the world tilts. No one should have been able to move like that, strike like that, especially not someone without power. She should not have risked herself for him at all. The crown will see it as nothing, a curiosity, but to Kai, it is a spark in the dark, a reminder that unpredictability still exists, that their rigid hierarchy is not as seamless as it pretends to be. He finds himself thinking of her more than he should, turning her face over in his mind like a puzzle piece that does not fit. It is not fascination, he tells himself. It is strategy. But as the tournament, the deadly gauntlet that will choose who rules beside him, draws near, her shadow lingers at the edges of his thoughts, like a threat and a promise. Chapter 3. Paedyn. The city becomes a trap the moment Paedyn's name begins to spread. She feels the crown's gaze like a net tightening around her, every alley and market stall suddenly sharp with unseen eyes. The prince she saved, Kai, has not let the incident fade into silence. Instead, he has drawn her into the open, marking her with the one thing she never wanted: notice. Guards begin appearing on her usual routes, and even the black market brokers she trades with glance over their shoulders before speaking her name. Paedyn tries to vanish again, slipping through hidden paths and shuttered doorways, but the city that once kept her safe has turned against her. She is too exposed, too visible, and she knows the crown's mercy is a myth. Those who attract their attention rarely survive it for long. Her desperation curdles into anger when she learns what the crown intends. She is to be thrust into the gauntlet, the lethal tournament where the strongest elites compete for power and favor. It is a spectacle meant to prove the supremacy of their kind, and the powerless are meant to watch from the ashes. For someone like Paedyn, entering it is a death sentence. Yet the Crown sees a chance to turn her into their story. A powerless girl surviving as entertainment until she inevitably dies. Paedyn wants to scream, to run, but she forces the fear down until only ice remains. She has lived her whole life defying the rules of this world. If they want her in their arena, then she will go, but not to play their game. She will go to break it. Chapter 4. Paedyn. They strip her of everything the moment she's claimed for the gauntlet. Her knives are taken, her clothes replaced by the sleek, dark uniform of a contestant, and her identity reduced to a number inked across her wrist. The arena where they hold her is carved from cold stone and gilded edges, all gleaming cruelty, and everywhere she looks, the walls hum with the presence of elites, power sparking like heat lightning across their skin. Paedyn walks among them like a ghost. She can feel their eyes on her, some mocking, others curious, all convinced she will be the first to fall. She keeps her head high, her face unreadable, while inside her heart rattles against her ribs like a trapped bird. This is what they want, to see fear. She refuses to give them that satisfaction. In the quiet hours before the trials begin, she studies the others. There are born warriors among them, lethal and glittering, their powers woven into every flick of their hands. Paedyn has nothing but her mind, her speed, her ability to vanish. So she plans. She memorizes escape routes, watches the guards' patterns, traces the arena's layout in her mind until it becomes a map branded behind her eyelids. If she cannot be stronger, she will be smarter. If she cannot win, she will survive. Somewhere deep inside, the ember of defiance glows brighter. They dragged her here to prove that the powerless cannot endure. She intends to make surviving her act of rebellion. Chapter 5. Kai. From his place, high in the royal viewing halls, Kai watches the gauntlet begin with a face carved from marble. The bowl below seethes with contestants, their powers flaring like wild storms, and the crowd howls with bloodthirsty delight. It is a show of dominance, and he is expected to revel in it. But the noise barely touches him. His gaze keeps slipping to her. Paedyn moves differently from the others. No crackling aura, no brute force, just quickness, precision, the kind of instinct born from years on the edge of hunger. She should not last 5 minutes. Yet she does. Again and again, she slips between strikes, using their strength against them, turning chaos into cover. Kai feels something stir low in his chest, something dangerously close to admiration, and it rattles him. She should be nothing, an anomaly to be crushed beneath the gauntlet's weight. Yet as he watches her survive round after round, he feels the foundations of his world shift. The elites around him sneer, betting on when she will fall, but Kai says nothing. He keeps his face cold, impassive, while his mind turns over questions he cannot ask. If someone without power can endure this, what does that say about the world he was built to rule? What does it say about him? He pushes the thoughts down, but they linger, sharp as splinters. Chapter 6. Kai. The tournament grinds on like a living machine, each round bloodier than the last, and Kai moves among it like its architect. His days blur with strategy sessions, political obligations, and public appearances, all while the Crown's eyes rest heavily on him, waiting to see if he will uphold the perfection they've bred into him. Outwardly, he does. He stands like a pillar of control, every word measured, every glance cold. But inside, he is unraveling. Paedyn has lodged herself in his mind like a seed, growing roots through every crack. He watches her refuse to break, and it shatters the logic of everything he has been taught. Strength, they always said, comes from power. But she is proving that strength can come from something else entirely. Something the crown cannot manufacture or control. When their paths cross behind the scenes, briefly, unexpectedly, it rattles him more than any battle. She meets his gaze without flinching, her eyes fierce even as her hands tremble from exhaustion. And for a heartbeat, he forgets who they are supposed to be. He forgets that he is the crown's heir, and she is their spectacle. He remembers only that she is human, and that somehow matters more than it should. He tells himself it is curiosity, nothing more. But the thought of her dying in this arena feels wrong in a way he cannot explain. Chapter 7. Paedyn. Sleep has become a luxury Paedyn can no longer afford. The barracks are steeped in silence that feels brittle, like glass stretched too thin, and every time she closes her eyes, she hears the echo of screams from the bowl. The gauntlet is devouring them all, piece by piece, spirit by spirit, and she can see it in the hollowed gazes of the competitors who still wake each morning. There are fewer of them now. The space around her cot grows emptier with each dawn, and the air hums with the quiet, taut fear of people pretending they are not next. Paedyn has survived on her own all her life, but this solitude feels different, heavier, because here it is not chosen. It has been carved out by death. She keeps herself apart from the others, knowing any alliance would only end in betrayal or blood. But isolation has sharp edges. She feels herself fraying at the seams, hunger gnawing at her belly, bruises blooming like shadow across her skin, exhaustion settling into her bones like lead. And yet, she cannot stop. She has become a spectacle in their eyes now, the powerless girl who refuses to fall, and that attention feels like fire crawling over her skin. The crown wants her to crack. They want to prove that her endurance was only luck, a fluke that cannot last. Paedyn sharpens that pressure into fuel. Every time she steps back into the bowl, she tells herself the same thing. They will not see her break. She will not give them that victory. Chapter 8. Paedyn. The bowl has begun to feel like a living thing, shifting and breathing beneath Paedyn's feet as if the arena itself wants to swallow her whole. The 8th trial begins in an eruption of blinding light and deafening sound, and before she can even fully register the new terrain, she is running. The floor tilts in jagged bursts, slabs of stone rising and dropping unpredictably while the crown's overseers watch from above with gleaming, impassive eyes. Around her, the other competitors scatter like startled birds, their powers flashing wild arcs through the smoke. But Paedyn slips between them like a thread through the weave. She no longer thinks about fear. She thinks only about angles, timing, the flicker of a shadow that signals an incoming strike. Her body moves before her mind catches up, honed by instinct and the ruthless rhythm of survival. She notices, dimly, how the others are starting to look at her differently. No longer with amusement or pity, but with something edged, resentment, maybe even fear. Each time she dodges death, each time she outlasts another fallen elite, their disbelief turns sharper. She can feel the shift tightening around her like a snare. They are beginning to see her not as an anomaly, but as a threat, and that makes her more dangerous in their eyes than any power ever could. The realization makes her heart slam harder in her chest, but she refuses to flinch. They wanted her to be their spectacle, their powerless pawn thrown to the flames. Instead, she will become their ghost, the one they cannot catch, the one who keeps slipping through their claws no matter how hard they try, and if they want her gone, they will have to bleed for it. Chapter 9. Kai. From his vantage high above the bowl, Kai watches the carnage unfold with the stillness of a statue, though his pulse hammers beneath the armor of his composure. The gauntlet has entered its bloodiest phase, and the surviving contenders move like predators, their powers crackling through the air in brutal flashes. This is what the crown wants: a spectacle of strength, a savage performance to remind the powerless of their place. And yet, all Kai can see is her. Paedyn threads through the chaos below, small and fast, darting where others crash headlong, reading the arena's shifting terrain as if it speaks only to her. She is supposed to be fragile, breakable, a powerless girl dragged here to die for their entertainment. But she has become something else entirely, something none of them can name. The dissonance unsettles him more than he admits. She is defying the very laws of their world, surviving where she should not, bending the tournament's rhythm around her like it was built for her all along. The elites around him dismiss it as luck, but Kai knows better. He has trained his whole life to measure threat, and he recognizes it in her, the quiet, relentless kind that cannot be crushed because it refuses to stop. And that recognition ignites something sharp inside him, something he should not feel. She should be insignificant, yet his gaze keeps finding her, and with each passing round, she pulls another thread loose in the tapestry of his certainty. For the first time, he wonders if the world he was born to rule is built on nothing but smoke. Chapter 10. Paedyn. The 10th trial begins under a sky choked with smoke, and the bowl feels smaller now, as if the walls have crept inward to cage what remains of them. Paedyn's body aches with every movement. Bruises burn beneath her skin. Her muscles scream from nights without sleep. But she forces herself forward as the terrain shifts. The ground is fractured and unstable, stone slabs rising and collapsing without warning, forcing the competitors into constant motion. It is chaos, designed to break their rhythm and bait desperation. But Paedyn has lived her whole life inside chaos. She moves through it like it's her element, slipping between flares of power and flying debris, never where anyone expects her to be. Around her, elites clash with feral intensity, their powers scorching the air, but she lets them burn each other down and uses their wreckage as her cover. For the first time, the crowd above does not jeer when she appears. They chant. Their disbelief has curdled into something electric, something that hums in the air as they scream her name, and Paedyn feels it crawl beneath her skin like heat. She does not want their fascination, but she cannot ignore what it means. She has crossed some invisible line. She is no longer the anomaly they expected to die first. She is becoming a symbol of defiance, a living fracture in the crown's order. The thought makes her chest tighten, because symbols are not allowed to falter. Yet, as she stands in the broken heart of the bowl, blood pounding through her, she feels something sharp and dangerous stir inside her. Not just the will to endure, but the temptation to win. Chapter 11. Paedyn. The days blur into a fragile rhythm, and Paedyn tries to convince herself that rhythm means safety. She keeps her head down, moving through the market with measured grace, reading people like pages and slipping their secrets from their pockets along with their coins. Yet even as her hands move with perfect control, her mind spins. The city feels different now, heavier, as if the air itself has started watching her. She tells herself she's being paranoid, but the truth claws at her ribs. Ever since that moment in the square, she has not been able to forget Kai's eyes. He had looked at her like someone assembling a puzzle, and she knows what happens to things he solves. They're broken apart. Adina notices her tension, of course. She always does. They walk together through the crooked veins of loot, Adina teasing her in an effort to spark a smile. But Paedyn's laugh feels hollow. It's not just fear that gnaws at her. It's the sense that something is coming, something bigger than she can stop. The purging trials are approaching, and though they have nothing to do with her world, she hears whispers about them in every corner of the slums. The trials are for the elites, the powerful heirs who will shape Ilya's future, and she should be nothing more than a distant spectator. Yet she can't shake the feeling that the currents of that world are shifting toward her, dragging her closer. That night, when they return to their hidden rooms, Paedyn lingers by the cracked window, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere beyond the glittering skyline, the palace looms like a blade poised above them all. She has always been good at sensing danger before it strikes, reading the way storms build on the horizon, and she can feel one now, rumbling in the distance, coming for her. She does not know how or when, but she knows this. If it reaches her, it will not leave anything of her old life standing. Chapter 12. Kai. The palace hums with anticipation as the purging trials draw near, and Kai feels that hum under his skin like a current. The halls are crowded with young elites desperate to prove themselves, posturing and preening as they prepare to spill each other's blood for glory. Kai moves among them like winter, cutting through spring, silent and sharp. He will not compete. His father has deemed him above such theatrics, but he will oversee the carnage, standing as a reminder of what they should aspire to and what they should fear. It is the role carved for him, the watchful blade, the inevitable shadow. And yet, for all his certainty in his duty, a thread of restlessness coils in him. He trains harder than ever, as if effort alone can still that restlessness. His mimicry power makes him unparalleled, able to seize and wield any ability he touches, and the others know it. They glance at him like prey checking the position of a predator. Even his father watches him with a kind of cold pride, as though he is not a son, but a weapon finally honed. Kai has spent his life chasing that approval, but lately he wonders if it was worth the cost. The palace is full of noise, of voices and power and color, but none of it feels real. None of it feels like his. And still, through the weight of all this, his mind strays to her, the girl from Loot, the one who lied as if it were breathing, who stood unflinching beneath his gaze. He has tried to cast her from his thoughts, to bury her under duty and discipline, but she lingers like an ember that refuses to die. He does not know why this one girl unsettles him when so little else can, only that she does. And Kai Azer is not the kind of man who leaves mysteries unsolved. If fate does not place her in his path again, he is beginning to think he might just go looking for her himself. Chapter 13. Paedyn. The slums wear their chaos like a crown, and Paedyn moves through it with her usual calculated grace, but her mind is anything but steady. Word of the purging trials has seeped even into Loot's forgotten corners, carried on the breathless gossip of merchants and drunkards alike. Every whispered rumor of blood and spectacle makes her stomach tighten. The trials have nothing to do with her. She has no power, no place in the palace's cruel games, yet she cannot shake the feeling that the world beyond Loot is shifting, tilting on an axis she cannot see. She has always trusted her instincts, and they are screaming at her now, warning of an approaching storm. Adina senses her unease and tries to ground her in the routines they've built, pulling her into the rhythm of theft and laughter and whispered schemes. For a time, Paedyn lets herself be swept into it, snatching food from distracted vendors, spinning ominous prophecies for careless nobles who wander too close to the slums. The familiar work steadies her hands, but not her heart. The memory of Kai's eyes still haunts her, a splinter she can't dig out. She tells herself he's forgotten her, that she is nothing to someone like him. But some deeper part of her knows better. Predators do not forget what catches their attention. That night, she lies awake, listening to the wind claw at the broken windows, thinking of the thin line her life balances on. She has built her survival on invisibility, but she is no longer invisible. Not to Kai, and not, it seems, to fate. There is a gravity in the air now, pulling her toward something she cannot escape. She doesn't know what it will demand of her when it arrives, only that it will demand everything. And when it does, she isn't sure there will be anything left of the girl she has been. Chapter 14. Paedyn. The day begins like any other, yet every sound seems sharper, every color too bright. Paedyn walks through the market with her senses stretched taut, scanning for danger as though it might be painted on the air. She knows it's irrational. She's survived this long by trusting logic over fear, but her instincts have never screamed this loudly, without reason. She distracts herself by working, slipping into her role as a psychic with practiced elegance, reading her marks so precisely they hand over coins as if enchanted. Each small success reminds her who she is, or at least who she pretends to be. Sharp, composed, untouchable. And yet the composure feels brittle now, like glass under strain. When she returns to their hideout, Adina is waiting with her usual reckless grin, but even Adina's warmth can't thaw the chill in Paedyn's bones. They speak softly about dreams of escape, of someday seeing the world beyond Ilya's borders. But the words feel like lies, even as they say them. Paedyn knows escape is a fantasy. The moment Kai's gaze found her in that marketplace, the rules of her world shifted. She has lived her whole life unseen, but she is seen now, and that cannot be undone. Adina notices her silence and presses, gently but firmly, until Paedyn admits she's afraid. Adina tells her she's clever enough to outthink even a prince. Paedyn nods, but the truth sits heavy and cold. Cleverness may not be enough this time. That night, she dreams of fire-consuming loot, of the palace looming above the ashes like a vulture, and of Kai standing amid it all, watching her with those piercing eyes. She wakes trembling, unable to shake the sense that the dream is not a warning of something that might come, but a glimpse of something already on its way. Something she won't be able to outrun. Chapter 15. Paedyn. The air in the barracks is heavy with tension, a silence so taut it feels like it might snap at the slightest sound. Paedyn lies awake long after the others have collapsed into uneasy sleep, staring at the ceiling as the echoes of the day's battle thrum through her bones. Her body is a map of bruises, her muscles trembling from exhaustion, but her mind refuses to still. The gauntlet is changing them. She can see it in the survivors' eyes, harder, sharper, their fear carved into something cold. Even she is not immune. Each time she walks into the bowl, she sheds a little more of who she was to become something the Crown would find useful if they could control it. That thought coils like poison in her gut. She promised herself she wouldn't let them shape her. But the more she fights, the more she wonders if it's already happening. When dawn comes, there's no softness to it, only the clang of iron doors and the barked orders of guards driving them out into the glaring light. The next trial waits, more brutal than the last. its arena reshaped into a labyrinth of towering stone walls, slick with moisture and shadow. It smells of damp and blood, and the overseers stand like dark statues above, their gazes cold and expectant. Paedyn moves first, slipping into the maze while the others hesitate, the echo of her boots swallowed by the twisting corridors. Every corner feels like a trap. The air is too still, too heavy, and she knows something is hunting them in here. Her heart slams against her ribs, but she pushes forward, light on her feet, mind razor-sharp. Fear is what they want. So she will give them something else. Survival. Over and over. Until it breaks their game apart. Chapter 16. Kai. From the viewing platform above the labyrinth, Kai watches the competitors disappear into its dark mouth one by one, their footsteps fading into silence. The Crown crafted this trial to strip them of sight, of certainty, of control, and the overseers beside him watch with thin smiles as if they're about to witness a culling. Kai stands motionless, arms folded behind his back, his expression carved into the perfect coldness they expect. But inside, he is a storm. He can feel the tension in his jaw, the ache in his hands from gripping the railing too tightly. Somewhere in that shifting maze below is Paedyn, darting through the shadows like a spark trying to outrun a tide of darkness. She has survived far longer than anyone expected, and the Crown's patience for her defiance is wearing thin. He can see it in the sharp flicks of their gazes, the way their voices lower when they speak her name. The labyrinth shifts beneath the competitors' feet, its walls grinding into new shapes as the Crown's magic warps the stone, and distant screams echo up through the cracks. Kai watches the overseers lean forward, eager, and feels something inside him recoil. This is what they were bred to enjoy, this spectacle of fear and blood. It used to thrill him once, or at least he thought it did. Now it tastes like ash. His gaze snags on a flicker of movement, a small figure vaulting a collapsing wall, sliding into cover just as an explosion tears the corridor apart. And though he tells himself it could be anyone, he knows it's her. Paedyn, still alive, still running. Against every law of their world, she endures, and Kai cannot decide if he wants her to win, or if he fears what will happen if she does. Chapter 17. Kai. The clang of steel and the rush of instinct fill Kai's senses as he ducks under Gray's blade with practiced ease. They circle each other in the training ring, the air between them sharp with challenge. Gray's grin is sharp and goading, daring him to slip, and Kai finds himself smiling back despite the tension grinding inside him. Every strike she throws is calculated, every feint designed to test his reflexes, and while he easily parries her blows, he can't ignore how her presence stirs something volatile just beneath his surface. They move like predators sparring in a cage, and for a few brief moments, the weight of duty and bloodlines fades until there's only the rhythm of combat and the flash of teeth. When their spar ends, the world rushes back in like a tide. Kai wipes sweat from his brow as Gray saunters off with infuriating nonchalance, leaving him simmering with adrenaline. He lingers in the emptying arena, watching the other contenders filter out, each of them shouldering their own burdens as the purging trials draw closer. For Kai, the trials aren't just sport. They are survival, politics, and performance entwined. The pressure is constant to prove his strength to the kingdom, to his father, and to himself. Yet even as he steels himself, he can't stop his mind from flickering back to the silver-haired thief-turned-contestant who keeps disrupting his careful world. Later, when the palace halls grow quiet, Kai walks them alone. The echo of his boots, a reminder of how hollow grandeur can be. He knows what the trials demand of him: ruthlessness, spectacle, but something in him is shifting, some part unwilling to see the arena as just a stage for slaughter. Thoughts of Paedyn slip in like smoke, unwanted but impossible to ignore. He doesn't know what she truly is or why she unsettles him so deeply, only that she is a threat to the order he's built around himself. And yet, buried under the threat, there's a spark of fascination he cannot quite stamp out. Chapter 18. Paedyn. Paedyn sits stiff-backed at the banquet table, her smile practiced and hollow while her thoughts whirl like blades. The hall is drenched in gold light and tension, every noble watching her as if she might break under their gaze. She tells herself she's not an ordinary. Not tonight. Tonight her power is deception, her shield the easy lies that glide off her tongue. She needs these people to like her, to believe she belongs, to see her as strong and clever instead of fragile. Their votes will keep her alive in the trials, and so she forces laughter at dull jokes, lifts her chin as if she's not trembling inside, and lets their curiosity brush over her like applause she's learned to endure. But beneath the glittering tablecloth and jeweled goblets, fear gnaws at her. The trials are coming, and the palace is beginning to feel like a trap closing its jaws around her. She watches the other competitors from the corner of her eye, reading their every twitch and whisper, cataloging which ones are dangerous, which ones crave the crowd's adoration, and which ones are quietly planning someone's ruin. She knows they're doing the same to her. If she falters even once, the illusion of her power will shatter, and the kingdom will see her for what she really is: prey. So she keeps her mask flawless, though it feels heavier by the hour. When the dinner finally ends, Paedyn escapes into the empty corridors like a shadow slipping from its owner. The silence is jarring after the suffocating noise of the banquet, but she drinks it in like air. She thinks of Adina and Loot Alley, of the soot-choked skies and the freedom of anonymity, and the ache of homesickness takes her by surprise. There, she was invisible. Here, every step she takes echoes too loud, every glance feels like a blade. She presses her palm to her father's ring for steadiness and whispers a promise into the still air. She will survive this. She will lie, cheat, charm, and fight until she claws her way back to freedom, or dies trying. Chapter 19. Paedyn. The night is quiet when a knock pulls Paedyn from the edge of sleep. Instinct rules her body before thought can catch up. Her dagger is in her hand, drawn from beneath her pillow, as she stalks toward the door. When she swings it open, she's met by a familiar pair of gray eyes. Kai's. He takes in the weapon, the bruises on her cheekbone, and split lip from their brutal fight earlier that day, and smirks. The same pride that kept her from seeking the healers has left him marked as well, faint bruises still blooming across his jaw where she struck him. Their battered reflections of one another hang in the charged air between them, and for a heartbeat, it's impossible to tell whether they're about to fight again or something even more dangerous. Kai leans in the doorway, all lazy confidence, and announces he's here for his lesson. Paedyn scoffs at the idea, but he's serious. He steps inside, casting the room into sharp relief with his presence. What begins as a biting exchange of words becomes something far more precarious. A test of boundaries neither of them truly want to acknowledge. He presses her to prove her skill, to teach him what she knows about moving unseen, and Paedyn reluctantly plays along, if only to show she's still in control. Yet, as they circle each other, the lesson warps into something taught, and magnetic, their movements drawing them close enough that she can feel the warmth of him, smell the faint trace of smoke on his skin. The space between them feels like a blade's edge, sharp enough that one slip could cut them both open. When the tension grows too sharp, Kai retreats first, slipping back into the role of mocking prince as though he hadn't just been standing so close she could hear the catch of his breath. He leaves her in silence, the door closing soft behind him, but the echo of his nearness lingers like a fingerprint on her skin. Alone again, Paedyn exhales shakily, furious at herself for letting him in, even for a moment. This is exactly how people die in this palace, not from the obvious dangers, but from forgetting what someone like Kai truly is. And yet, despite every warning bell screaming in her mind, her heart still hasn't slowed. Chapter 20. Kai. The first ball of the purging trials opens in a swirl of black suits, black ties, and gleaming marble floors, and Kai stands at the center of it all like a predator in a cage of peacocks. The ballroom is thick with noblemen of every age, each draped in wealth and ambition, while servants slip through the crowd with silver trays laden with wine and artfully arranged food. The trials have always included these tedious displays of wealth, but this year's banquet carries a sharper edge because this is not merely a ceremony anymore. It is a test, one that Kai himself helped shape. Instead of the usual hours of dancing and meaningless chatter, the night begins with carefully staged spectacle. Every toast and smile, a sharpened mask. Despite the glittering setting, Kai is restless. He has played this role for years, the cold, composed prince, lurking behind practiced smiles, but tonight the weight of it feels heavier. He lounges near the edge of the hall with Kit, both pretending to be entertained, while their eyes track the shifting alliances around them. The castle's grandest room, with its soaring columns and towering windows, feels stifling in its perfection. Every man here is watching every other, calculating what this new version of the trials will mean for power, for survival. And though Kai excels at these games, part of him is aching to break free of them, to find something real among all the painted masks. Beneath the surface of the conversation and clinking glasses, he is thinking about Paedyn. Her defiance during the challenges has lodged itself under his skin, impossible to shake. Even here, surrounded by sycophants and schemers, his attention keeps drifting to the shadow of her, how she survives every trap meant to crush her, how she doesn't bend the way the others do. The contrast gnaws at him, the artificial elegance of the nobles versus the raw, unyielding spirit of the girl who should not still be standing. He cannot decide if she is a danger to be extinguished or the only honest thing in the room. And that uncertainty, the rare sensation of not knowing, thrums through his veins stronger than the wine. Chapter 21. Paedyn. Paedyn is swept into the glittering chaos of the palace ball, an island of silver among a sea of green and black that feels both intoxicating and perilous. Kit twirls her across the floor in a way that makes the room tilt. For a moment, the bright lights and flowing music blur everything into motion, and she lets herself move with them, because the practiced poise will help sell the illusion she has to keep alive. She is aware of every look, curious, hungry, calculating, that follows her as she descends the stairs and steps into the room. Being the one in silver makes her visible in a way loot never allowed, and she wears that visibility like a weapon. A story to be remembered, a name to be whispered. Still, beneath the mask of charm, she's cataloging the crowd. Who watches too long, whose laugh hides a knife, which smiles are teeth. As the night unwinds, Paedyn works the room with the cold efficiency of someone who learned survival from hunger and stealth. She flirts, laughs, and deflects questions about her origins with crafted half-truths, all calibrated to earn votes and opinions that might keep her alive in the coming rounds. The weight of the trials is never far from her mind. She sizes opponents not by their gowns, but by the way they hold themselves and how quickly they blink under pressure. Backstage snatches of conversation and the sliding glances of courtiers feed her mental map of danger. When she's left with small private moments, holding her dagger hidden beneath silk, hearing the echo of her own breathing, she remembers Adina and the slums and the life that once allowed her to be invisible. Here, invisibility would kill her. Now, visibility must be weaponized. By the end of the evening, Paedyn's confidence is a brittle, deliberate thing, worn in public, tested in private. Alone in her chamber, she lets the performance drop and feels the exhaustion settle in. The theater of politeness, the constant measuring, the endless guarding of a lie. She steels herself for what comes next, reminding herself that every smile she traded tonight is an insurance policy for another day. Survival here will demand brilliance and ruthlessness in equal measure, and she resolves to use whatever it takes, wit, charm, theft, or blade, to keep breathing. Even so, a small, stubborn ember of something else lingers when she thinks of Kai's eyes across the room, a recognition that he has already seen more of her than she intended, and that the trouble he brings may be harder to outfox than the rest of the arena combined. Chapter 22. Paedyn. The aftermath of the attack leaves the palace shaken, and Paedyn finds herself shoved into a suffocating stone-safe room packed with nobles, contestants, and guards. Sweat slicks her skin under the heavy air as she leans against the cold wall for relief, watching Kit pace like a caged predator. His hands occasionally flare with brief tongues of fire, betraying the dual power simmering just beneath his control. The air hums with fear, people murmuring frantically about what happened, about who might be dead, about how something like this could breach the fortress of Ilya. Paedyn forces herself to be still, to observe. Every reaction is information, and she needs it all if she's going to keep surviving this blood-soaked spectacle. Eventually, they are released from confinement into a palace that feels different, its grandeur dimmed by lingering smoke and splashes of blood hurriedly scrubbed from the marble. Security locks down the grounds, and whispers fly that someone slipped through the royal guard. Paedyn tries to slip back into anonymity, to bury the way her heart still races, but people are watching her now more than ever, eyes lingering on her silver gown as though they expect her to unravel. She forces her steps to stay measured, forcing banter when Adina finds her, because showing fear is as dangerous as bleeding. Even so, unease coils tight in her chest. This attack was not random. Someone wanted to send a message, and the games are no longer the deadliest thing inside these walls. That night, exhaustion drags at her bones, but sleep is impossible. The palace has shifted. She can feel it in the way the guards speak in clipped tones, in how the laughter in the halls has gone brittle. Whatever fragile control the crown had is cracking. And in the crack, Paedyn sees opportunity, but also the risk of being crushed if she moves too soon. She lies awake staring at the ceiling, thinking of the streets of loot, of how survival always meant knowing when to disappear and when to strike. The arena may be built of gold, but the rules are the same as they've always been. Watch, wait, and when the moment comes, be sharper than anyone expects. Chapter 23. Kai. Kai wakes choking on wet earth, the sharp taste of moss and soil in his mouth as sunlight spears through towering pine trees above. Every part of him feels heavy and sluggish, his limbs stiff and clothes clinging to his skin with cold damp. As he pushes upright, blinking through the haze, he notices the thin leather band fused around his right forearm, cinched tight enough to numb the flesh beneath. Panic flares, then discipline smothers it. He was drugged, taken, and dumped here with purpose. The whispers. Even half-dazed, he knows the forest instantly, its vast tangle of pines and shadows infamous throughout Ilya for swallowing men whole. Whoever put him here wants him disoriented, alone, and hunted. Slowly, his soldier's instincts take over. He checks the terrain, cataloging details through the lingering fog in his mind. The way the trees cluster, the uneven ground littered with slick moss and jagged stone, the absence of birds now that he's moving. He has no weapons, no food, and no idea how far from the palace he's been dropped. What he does have is his training, and the cold, unyielding core that has carried him through every trial. Each sound seems magnified, the quiet broken only by the creak of distant boughs and the occasional snap of something unseen moving through the undergrowth. This is not a test of skill alone. This is psychological warfare. They've taken his control, and Kai knows that to survive, he must take it back piece by piece. As the day bleeds into restless hours, Kai pushes deeper into the forest, hunger gnawing at him, and the band on his arm throbbing with a dull heat that makes his skin crawl. He thinks of the palace, of the glittering ballroom, and Paedyn's defiant silver figure slicing through it. And something sharp cuts through the fog. A need to get back, to prove that whoever orchestrated this will regret not finishing the job. The forest closes around him like a mouth, shadows stretching long as the sun dips lower, and Kai moves through it with grim purpose. He is not just enduring this. He is hunting the ones who dared make him prey. Chapter 24. Paedyn. Paedyn's first enemy in the Whispers isn't a rival contestant or a hidden predator. It's a screeching bird perched above her, taunting her frayed nerves as she trudges through the forest on an empty stomach. She is exhausted, starving, and still reeling from the violent disorientation of waking face down in the dirt hours earlier, surrounded by the oppressive hush of ancient trees. Her thin sleep clothes cling to her skin, wholly unfit for survival, and the realization that she must endure this place for a full week claws at her resolve. The Whispers feels alive in a way the palace never did, each rustle of leaves a warning, each shadow a potential threat. Even the sight, who appeared briefly upon her awakening, a silent figure in white, present only to observe, has vanished, leaving her completely alone in the vast, wild expanse. As she pushes through the undergrowth, the forest tests her in small, vicious ways. Thorned vines snare her ankles, mud sucks at her boots, and the sudden strike of a snake nearly takes her foot before she can fling it away. Hunger grinds at her focus until every distant noise sounds like an approaching predator. She tries to recall every trick she learned surviving the alleys of loot, but the Whispers is nothing like the city. It is unbound and merciless, and even the air seems to weigh against her. The thought of the other contestants out here somewhere sharpens her fear. If they find her like this, weak, cold, unarmed, they will tear through her without hesitation. The forest might not even need to kill her. They will do it first. But as daylight begins to dim beneath the thick canopy, something inside her steadies. The same instinct that once kept her alive on the streets snaps back into place, hard and clear. She cannot panic. Panic kills faster than claws or teeth. She forces her breathing to slow, sets her mind on one simple goal. One step, then another, and keeps moving. The forest hums with unseen dangers, but she reminds herself that she has survived impossible odds before. If the Whispers think they can break her, they will learn what Loot Alley already knows. Paedyn Gray does not break. Chapter 25. Paedyn. Paedyn stumbles through the Whispers in a fevered haze, every step dragging her deeper into exhaustion. Her eyelids feel like lead, and she fears that if they close, they won't open again. Blood loss has left her weak and trembling, her makeshift bandage already soaked scarlet, while fever blurs the edges of her vision. She mutters a litany under her breath. Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. Pinching her arm to jolt her slipping focus as she pushes toward the distant sound of running water. The forest presses close on all sides, its ancient silence oppressive, and she knows with chilling clarity that if she collapses here, no one will find her. She has to keep moving. The forest seems to warp around her as she nears the creek, every shadow twisting into imagined threats. When she finally reaches the water, she collapses to her knees and plunges her hands into the icy current, scrubbing the blood and dirt from her wound with shaking fingers. The pain is white-hot, ripping through her fog and leaving her gasping. But it cuts through the haze enough for her to think. She gathers leaves and herbs from the banks, fragments of her father's teachings clawing their way back through the fever, and grinds them into a rough salve to stave off infection. It's messy and desperate, but it's something. As she ties off the wound again, her mind clears just enough to register how close she came to vanishing here. Swallowed without a trace. Strength trickles back only slowly, and the forest does not pause to let her recover. Every rustle in the undergrowth sets her nerves on edge, and she feels the pressure of unseen eyes tracking her as she moves again. She knows the other contestants are out here somewhere, possibly watching, possibly waiting. They would pounce if they saw her like this. So she forces her back straight, masking her limp, and slips deeper into the trees with quiet, measured steps. Pain still claws at her body, but her will is sharper. The Whispers is trying to break her down piece by piece, but she will not give it the satisfaction. She will not die here. Not for their game, not for their spectacle. Chapter 26. Kai. Kai crouches in the dim firelight beside Paedyn's still form, his heart hammering with a sharp, unfamiliar panic. Her breaths come shallow and ragged, her skin blazing with fever while her lips have gone pale. Blood still seeps from the jagged gash under her ribs, the wound angry and swollen, and he curses under his breath because he has nothing. No medicine, no supplies, no way to heal her. He dabs at the blood with the scraps of his torn shirt, trying to see the extent of the damage. But the truth is simple and brutal. She's dying. The realization claws at him with something he refuses to name. He tells himself it's only strategy, only necessity. She is his responsibility, his opponent, a piece on the board that can't be allowed to fall. But as he watches her shiver in her sleep, he knows that's a lie. Frustration boils through him, hot and helpless. He rakes his hands through his hair, scouring the dark camp for his canteens, for anything to keep her alive a little longer. Water. She came into his camp chasing water, and now she may not live long enough to drink it. He presses the rim of the canteen to her lips, coaxing her to swallow tiny sips, and feels the relief like a blade loosening at his ribs when she obeys, just barely. It's not enough. Nothing he does is enough. For the first time in years, Kai feels utterly powerless, stripped of the control that has always defined him. He wants to rage at her stubbornness, her recklessness, but what burns hotter is fear. Not fear of losing an ally, fear of losing her. The night stretches long as he keeps vigil by her side, feeding the fire and forcing her to sip water whenever she stirs. Between those moments, his mind reels through the chaos of the past days, the whispers swallowing them both, the sudden attack that scattered the contestants, the way she's kept surviving when logic says she shouldn't. She is infuriating and impossible, and yet somehow has carved her way under his skin like a thorn he can't dislodge. He doesn't know what she is to him now, rival, threat, or something far more dangerous, but he knows this: he will not let her die here. Not in this forest, not alone. Even if he has to carry her through every mile of the whispers himself. Chapter 27. Paedyn. Paedyn wakes to a cacophony of squawking birds and the sharp glare of sunlight, blinking blearily as her fingers trace the cloth wrapped around her side. The wound is tender but no longer blazing with fever, and the realization that she is alive stuns her almost as much as the fact that the leather band is still strapped around her arm. She half expects to find herself abandoned, left to die in the whispers while the trials march on without her. But instead, Kai is there, leaning against a low branch, shirtless, arms folded, watching her with his maddening calm. The memory of his hands tending her wounds flickers through her mind, clashing with the arrogant smirk tugging at his mouth when he catches her staring. It's easier to glare than admit how much relief floods through her at the sight of him. Their conversation is barbed from the first word, laced with irritation and something far more dangerous. Paedyn demands to know why he saved her, and Kai brushes it off with infuriating nonchalance, claiming it was merely fair play. She scoffs at the idea of him as a gentleman, unwilling to let him see the part of her that trembles at how close she came to dying. He offers her food, an almost tender gesture disguised beneath sharp words, and they eat together by the fire, though the air between them hums like a drawn bowstring. He teases her about staring. She fires back that he's arrogant and insufferable. It's a rhythm they've fallen into, one neither of them seems able to stop, as if their survival is tangled up in these clashes that spark like flint and steel. As the day stretches on, they travel together through the forest, their uneasy alliance held together by necessity and something neither dares name. The whispers seems to stalk them from the shadows, and Paedyn can't decide if Kai's presence makes her feel safer or more exposed. He matches her pace without comment, occasionally glancing back to check she's keeping up, and though she bristles at the implication she might falter, part of her is grateful for it. The forest has been trying to kill her since the moment she woke here, and yet she is still standing because of him. The thought unsettles her as much as it steadies her. She has survived alone her whole life, but now her survival is tethered to someone she's supposed to see as an enemy. And the most dangerous part is, she isn't sure she still does. Chapter 28. Kai. 3 days have passed since the wolf's teeth tore into Kai's flesh, and since Paedyn's hands stitched him back together, despite his warning that she should only touch him if she wanted to. The wound has healed into an aching throb, but what lingers sharper is the memory of her fingers on his skin. Every glance from her leaves him unsteady, as if she's stolen the air from his lungs. He tells himself he hates it, but the lie rings hollow even in his own mind. Their camp has settled around a creek, a fragile clearing carved out of the vast whispers, and though they split up during the day to scout for other competitors, Kai finds himself resenting the hours apart. The forest feels dull without her to needle him, to throw his precision off balance, just enough to make him feel alive. As night drapes over the trees, Kai returns to their camp empty-handed, irritation crackling through him. They've found no other contestants, collected no new bands, and the monotony grates on his restless nature. Yet when he steps into the clearing and sees Paedyn crouched by the fire, her silver hair catching the glow like spun starlight, the irritation drains away as quickly as it came. They talk in low voices, the kind that skim the surface of meaning while hiding deeper currents, and he catches himself lingering on the shape of her smile, on how it softens when she thinks he isn't watching. She's supposed to be an enemy, an obstacle, yet she's become the gravity he orbits, without realizing. It unsettles him more than the forest ever could. Later, when Paedyn disappears into the trees to scout, Kai's unease sharpens into something closer to fear. The whispers has gone eerily quiet, its usual cacophony replaced by a too-perfect stillness, and he feels the shift in the air like a predator scenting a trap. When she returns, her eyes are sharp with the same awareness. Something is coming. The fragile cocoon they've built here cannot last. As they sit back to back by the fire that night, their shoulders brushing, Kai stares into the darkness and admits to himself what he can't say aloud. He no longer knows where she ends, and he begins, and if the forest tries to take her again, it will have to go through him first. Chapter 29. Paedyn. Shadows ripple across the dimly lit clearing as Paedyn and Kai find themselves abruptly surrounded, their backs instinctively pressed together. Figures emerge from the darkness, identical in stance and expression, their hazel eyes gleaming with menace. At their center stands Sadie, calm yet predatory, her voice slicing through the tense air as she demands their bands, their only ticket to survival in the deadly purging trials. She taunts them with a mocking smile, her duplicates tightening their human cage around the pair. Kai's response is weary, but sharp. He reminds her that she must have known they would never hand over their bands. Yet Sadie is unfazed, lowering her offer to just one band in exchange for their safety, though the threat in her tone makes it clear that refusal means bloodshed. Paedyn's heart pounds as her gaze darts to her bow lying on the ground beyond the wall of Sadie's, just out of reach. She has never felt so exposed, her lack of a weapon like a phantom ache at her side where her father's dagger used to rest. Panic claws at her, but she forces it down, searching for an opening, any chance to escape this tightening noose. The air grows heavy with the charged stillness before a fight, the firelight throwing their overlapping shadows against the cavern walls. They are outnumbered and outflanked, and yet surrender is not an option. The desperation steels her, sharpening her thoughts to a razor's edge. Whatever happens next, she knows they will have to fight not just for their bands, but for their lives. Chapter 30. Paedyn. The clearing is hushed after the chaos, the silence almost deafening as Paedyn lies curled near the dying fire, its embers flickering weakly like the remnants of her adrenaline. Her body still trembles faintly from the aftermath, her mind unwilling to process what just unfolded. She had refused to watch as Kai hauled Sadie's limp body away, slung over his shoulder with grim efficiency. Where he buried her or left her, she does not care to know. Instead, she busies herself with pacing the camp, splashing cold creek water over her skin to chase away the sticky heat of battle, then sinking to the ground again when the shivering starts. Everything feels surreal, like a fever dream settling into her bones, and she lies still for what could be minutes or hours, too drained to measure time. when a shadow suddenly sweeps over her and she spins with Sadie's knife ready. It is only Kai crouching down with a faint, crooked smirk, as though amused by her instincts rather than threatened. What follows is an uneasy lull, an awkward quiet threaded with something heavier than exhaustion. Kai stretches out on the other side of the fire, his movements slow and deliberate, but Paedyn can feel his attention on her even when his eyes are closed. Her mind wanders to the moment he carried Sadie off, to the way he did not flinch or hesitate, and it stirs something sharp and unsteady in her. He tells her not to overthink it, that killing is part of the trials, yet that truth sits bitter on her tongue. Death should not come so easily, and yet here they are, alive because someone else is not. She wonders if he ever feels the weight of it, or if the palace and the crown have stripped him of such burdens. When he catches her watching him, his gaze is unreadable, like the forest after rain, washed clean but hiding depths beneath. The night presses close around them as they settle in back to back, more from necessity than trust, though the warmth of his presence is unsettlingly grounding. Sleep comes fitfully to Paedyn, her mind looping over the knife still clutched in her fist, over the image of Sadie's duplicates dissolving into nothing, over the haunting realization that each day the purging trials strip away more of who she was before. She had always been a survivor, always clever and quick enough to slip through cracks. But this is different. Here, survival means blood. As the fire burns down to cold ash, she closes her eyes and forces herself to breathe evenly, pretending that she can still be the kind of person who will walk away from this unchanged, even as she knows it is a lie. Chapter 31. Kai. The forest seems determined to hold them captive, its endless sprawl of gnarled trees and coiling roots swallowing every sense of direction. Kai and Paedyn spend what they know is their last day in the Whispers, trudging endlessly toward the edge, guided only by a cryptic message from a nervous young sight who had darted into their camp and dropped a note before vanishing. The message offered no detail, only an order to meet at sunrise at the Whispers' boundary. The air is heavy with anticipation as they push through the oppressive undergrowth, tension simmering under every word. Paedyn curses when a snake slithers across her path and, with unthinking precision, sends her dagger spinning through the air to pin it to the ground. Kai hides a smile as he watches her retrieve the blade, a flash of pride mingling with the unease curling in his chest. There is something disarming about how naturally she moves through danger, as if she has always belonged to wild places like this. Hours stretch into a blur of roots and brambles until the two of them have fallen into a rhythm of exhaustion. They barely speak, conserving what little energy remains, yet their silence is not empty. It is a fragile tether, the quiet of people who have come to rely on each other more than they dare admit. Paedyn's steps grow uneven, fatigue pulling at her frame, and Kai finds himself slowing instinctively to match her pace without saying a word. When they finally stumble upon a narrow creek, they pause only long enough to gulp down handfuls of icy water before pressing on again. Every part of the Whispers seems intent on resisting their escape, the trees twisting tighter together the farther they go, as though the forest itself resents losing them. Kai's thoughts keep slipping to the note, to who could have sent it, and why. And beneath his unease runs a sharper current, the growing realization that leaving the forest might mean leaving behind this strange, delicate tether they've built. As twilight bleeds into night, the oppressive press of the Whispers finally begins to thin, the trees slowly spacing wider as if conceding defeat. Paedyn stumbles again, catching herself with a muttered curse, and Kai reaches out without thinking, steadying her by the elbow. She jerks away, scowling, but doesn't quite let go of his gaze before turning forward again. The boundary is close now. He can taste the cold openness of the world beyond the forest in the air, and yet an unexpected weight settles low in his chest. The whispers have been brutal, but they've also been theirs. A world pared down to only the two of them and the fight to survive. Soon there will be others again, allies and enemies, and the ruthless eyes of the kingdom watching. He wonders if, once they step beyond the trees, whatever fragile thing has grown between them will survive the return to reality, or if the forest will be the only place where it could have ever existed at all. Chapter 32. Kai. The moment fractures like glass in Kai's mind as Jax crumples before him, silent tears streaking his cheeks, wide brown eyes brimming with shock. The throwing star is buried deep in Jax's chest, dark blood oozing thickly from the wound, and Kai's world narrows to the sickening realization that he has done this, that his hand is the reason his closest friend is dying. He lowers Jax gently to the ground, voice shaking as he urges him to stay with him, even as the boy's gaze blurs and his breaths grow shallow. The forest is eerily still around them, a hollow silence pressing against Kai's ears as if the world itself is holding its breath to watch him break. He has seen countless people die in the trials, has been trained to be a weapon from the moment he could walk. But never Jax. Not Jax. The grief crashes through him raw and uncontained, tearing down the careful walls he has spent years building. In his desperation, Kai's voice hardens into command as he barks at Jax to hold on, to stay awake, to fight. His hands are clumsy as he tries to staunch the bleeding, but the wound is too deep, the blood too heavy, and he knows, deep down, that this is not a wound anyone walks away from. Jax's lips twitch faintly as he tries to smile, to speak, and Kai leans closer, drinking in every ragged word, as though it is the last light left in the world. Jax tells him he is proud of him, calls him brother, and that single word shreds what's left of Kai's composure. The memory of all they have shared, the training yards, the laughter, the reckless dares whispered after curfew, blurs with the present as Jax's body goes slack beneath his hands. For a moment, Kai just sits there, hands slick with his friend's blood, unable to breathe around the weight of it, unable to make himself let go. When the spell finally breaks, it does so in silence. Kai closes Jax's eyes and forces himself to rise, his body trembling as though his bones have forgotten how to hold him upright. The forest seems colder now, the air sharp in his lungs, and everything around him feels distant and meaningless. He has spent his whole life being shaped into the crown's perfect weapon, taught that victory is worth any cost. But no one warned him what it would be like to lose someone who mattered. He walks away from the body with numb, mechanical steps, not trusting himself to look back. Inside, though, something has cracked open and begun to bleed, something no crown or blade could ever make whole again. Chapter 33. Paedyn. The roar of thousands surrounds Paedyn as she sits rigid in the uncomfortable chair forced upon her, the sheer weight of all those watching eyes pressing down like a physical force. The bowl is crammed to bursting with Ilyans, their voices rising in an electric hum of excitement as they lean forward from the towering benches to peer into the pit. It has been 3 days since the chaos at the edge of the Whispers. 3 days since the final clash, where survival meant clawing through blood and shadows, and only 7 competitors remain. The crowd's impatient stomping echoes in her chest like phantom drumbeats, dragging her back to that last clearing where death still stalked them even after the trials were supposed to be over. Blair's fury, Andy's unexpected intervention, and the desperate scramble to stay alive blur together now, but the scars remain, hidden beneath the healer's work, yet etched into her memory with brutal clarity. Paedyn forces herself to keep her head high even as her muscles tense with exhaustion. Across the arena, she catches sight of the other survivors, some bandaged and pale, others glaring defiantly. But none of them look untouched. They are all remnants of the storm they endured, fragments of the people who entered the Whispers days ago. The air tastes of sweat and dust and blood, and the expectant hush from the crowd only sharpens the tension until it feels like a blade against her skin. She thinks of the days spent in the forest, of Kai's steady presence at her side like an anchor, and a chill flickers down her spine. He is here too, somewhere in the lineup of victors, and she cannot let herself look for him. Not when every eye is on her, every gaze searching for cracks she cannot afford to show. As trumpets blare from the royal platform, Paedyn jerks her gaze up to the high dais, where the gleaming silhouette of the king cuts a cruel figure against the sun. His expression is unreadable, but his voice booms over the arena like a hammer striking stone, proclaiming the end of the trials and the dawn of the final reckoning. The words wash over her like ice water, and she clenches her fists against her knees to keep them from shaking. She has survived the Whispers, but this feels different, colder, sharper, as if she has merely stepped from one snare into another. The cheers of the crowd rise around her like a tidal wave, yet beneath their roar, her heart whispers the truth she cannot ignore. The trials are over, but the real fight has only just begun. This has been the summary and analysis of Powerless by Lauren Roberts, summarized by Cellwave Audio and narrated by Bill.